On this episode of the Ideal Hour podcast, I have special guest Rennae Stubbs, four-time Olympian representing Australia on the world stage, former world's #1 doubles player, and most importantly to some, six-time Grand Slam champion. On top of that, she's an elite coach for top players, including Serena Williams.
Completely. You dream about it as a child. You sort of dream about maybe winning Wimbledon one day or whatever it is. And that was it. That was, for me, just so unattainable in a lot of ways because that just was something that I only dream of, right? So when it does happen, I mean, my first major title was at the Australian Open, which is pretty great because my family didn't travel very much to watch me play on the tour. Just every now and then, like literally once in 20 years, my parents came away. So I always want to get better. The greats are always the ones that ask the questions. The greats are always the ones that are curious about how they can get better every single day. And I can honestly say, when people said even about telling Serena what to do, she wants to get better. Getting the opportunity to work with Serena in her last US Open was pretty magical. It was also very stressful and very pressurized, if you can imagine. And coaching, people think it's easy. It's so hard because, physically it's not difficult unless you're the one practicing with the player all the time. But most top players have a hitting partner. I think it's a game that can be played by anyone, and everybody thinks they're good at it. So they're like, oh, this is my sport. I'm good at something. I was like, everybody's good at pickleball because it's a dumb sport.
What's up, everybody? This is Simon. On this episode of the Ideal Hour podcast, I have special guest Rennae Stubbs. Now, Rennae has quite a resume. Four-time Olympian representing Australia on the world stage, former world's #1 doubles player, and most importantly to some, six-time Grand Slam champion. On top of that, she's an elite coach for top players, including Serena Williams. I mean, this is quite a resume, Rennae, and you've accomplished a lot. Thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk about tennis because that's what people know you for, but there's so much more to it. Why tennis? When did you pick up a racket and said, this is what I love doing?
I think that, as an Australian, you're thrown out of the house to go and do sports. And at that stage, I was quite young. I was probably about 6 or 7. And my mom, I think the earliest memory was sort of going down for in-school holidays, tennis camp for a week and just like go away, take care of my kid for 5 days so I don't have to deal with her. And I was really active as a kid. I swam competitively, played netball, which is a game in Australia. I played any kind of sport I could with my brother. So it was kind of like, I kind of fell into it a little bit because doing the tennis thing was fun. And then as I got a little bit better, then I started to really focus on it probably around 9 or 10. And then I sort of, the other sports took a back seat. But I think it was because it was an individual sport and I just loved it. And I ran with it, literally.
And, it is an individual sport, and then you get the doubles part of it, and you've really known in doubles. At what point did you say, well, I like playing as an individual in this sport, but it's more fun doing a doubles, or when did that come to light, I guess?
Well, I actually played singles right up until I was about 30 years of age. And then I was consistently getting pretty bad injuries, just sort of tendonitis in my knee. I had bursitis. And then, I hurt my wrist quite badly when I was about 27 and I was out of the game for about 8 months. And it was hard for me because when I came back consistently from injuries, because what happens is your ranking drops down, I'd have to go and play qualifying at singles events. And that happens on the weekend of the finals of the week before, right? So I had to sort of make a decision based on where was I making more money, where was I having more success, and clearly that was in doubles. I was always a better doubles player, even as a kid. The game came so much more naturally and easy to me, where I had to really work on my singles, mentally. And when I started to really get really much better in singles, I was like 60 in the world, I started to move up. That's when the injuries started to happen. So at some point, I just decided to focus fully on doubles, and I was about 30 years of age, which back then was kind of getting into the retirement age. People would retire around 30, 31, you were old if you were playing tennis at 31. Nowadays, they're playing until they're like 37, 38, 39. I mean, some of the greats have played right up until 40. And so for me, I just decided to focus on the doubles, which was, I guess, a good idea because that's when I had most of my success from it was in my 30s.
30s is the new 20s.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So that's awesome. I would imagine that doubles is more lively or more fun because it brings in a little bit of a team-oriented environment. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think that in some regards, it's harder because you can't just rely on yourself. And if you're having a bad day, the good thing is you do have a partner. If you're having a good day and they're having a bad day, it's sort of like you can pick each other up. But there is collaboration about doubles. You have to have that. It's kind of like being married. You have to give and take, and you have to work with the person that you're with, and you can't just, if somebody is having a bad day, it's not always about the wins and losses. It's supporting each other through that. And I think the most successful ones are the ones that talk, communicate, tell each other what they need. And so it's kind of a balance. It's not that easy. And it is literally like a relationship. We see so many doubles teams like break up after a year or two, even if they're having quite a success, because one gets a little bit more egotistical, or their ego is getting ruined in certain ways, or they have teammates or partners or husbands or wives or family members that are maybe get involved. So it's not always that easy, but I mean, for me, it was, I guess, fun in some ways, but it just fit more of my game and my personality. And that's, I think, why I had so much success.
It definitely sounds like a marriage. So I can imagine the arguments and, you do this, you do that. Marriages aren't easy. So that's a fact. When you were in your youth or as a child or an up and coming player, who did you look up to at that time that was a role model for you? Because I feel like nowadays there's so many more female even role models in tennis and a lot of breakthroughs.
Yeah, I think that every generation looks up to the generation prior. For me, it was, the Chris Everts and Martina Navratilova were certainly people that I saw on television all the time. And I think we're really lucky in tennis with women in particular, because we've had so many great role models like Billie Jean King and all the players that came subsequently after her. And we saw them on television. And I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends that played other sports, whether it be soccer or, softball or whatever it is. They didn't really see their sport on television, so they almost idolized male counterparts in their sport. Whereas with tennis, you really did see the great players on television. I grew up in Australia, so I idolized people like 𝐒𝐲𝐻𝐿 𝐒𝐿𝐻, who was the, generation and a half before me. So I think it was just like whoever was on TV, you just wanted to be like them. And that was a lot of Martina and Chris and Yvonne and Billie Jean. And then subsequently after that, of course, became my age group, like Steffi Graf and Monica Seles and all those great champions that were during my era. And so I just think whoever's the best at the time is who you sort of want to attain yourself to be like.
When you realized tennis could be a career, was tennis a very highly paying career to go into, or is it a career that only some kind of make it? Similar to other sports, and a lot of people chase that dream and then hit kind of a plateau and then realize that, hey, I've spent so many years doing this, but I'm not going to be able to make money or make a living off this.
Yeah, I think, again, really lucky, right? I picked the one sport that's had a lot of sort of success and monetary reward, I guess, as a female athlete in tennis. We always had pretty decent quote unquote prize money comparative to, the aforementioned sports like soccer, basketball, when you just talk the WNBA, for example, I mean, they're just starting to sort of make some decent money now. Whereas, and they're, in bargaining to try and get more. But with tennis, we've always had pretty decent prize money, obviously, again, for, the likes of Billie Jean King fighting for equal prize money at Grand Slams, which really also made a big difference. But now the money now is even more incredible. Like I look at the prize money on offer for singles and doubles players now, it's just extraordinarily good. And I think, again, tennis had such a international following because we saw it on television. So I didn't really think about, to be honest, when you're that age, you don't really think about, is this going to be a living for me? You just sort of like fall into it. I don't know how to explain it really, but I think when you go into college and you want to, get a degree, you're getting a degree to get into business, to get into work, to get paid and all that. So it's sort of like this, it's kind of like putting a puzzle together, right? But when you're an athlete, you don't really think like that. You're just like, I love what I do. This is an amazing sport. Yes, probably I can make money, certainly as a tennis player. But it's not something that you go, oh, yeah, that's going to be it's just, I don't know how to explain it as a teenager. But then you start making money and you're like, oh, I can do this. I get paid. This is great. Why don't I just keep doing it and trying to attain more money, more titles, and then all of the rest comes after that, where you start paying taxes and you start maybe buying a home and you start thinking about all those things, and then all of a sudden adulthood hits you and you're like, oh, this is my job. So it's kind of, I don't know how to explain it, to be honest, but I guess I just got lucky that I picked a sport that paid okay at the time.
I think to your point that on such high level of competition, you're constantly doing what you have to do on a daily basis to keep up. You probably are not even thinking about that aspect of career or money. And you're just improving a little bit day by day just to be on the world stage or that level.
Yeah.
And it seems kind of common in a lot of sports. And then reality hits when you get a little older and you realize, this is a business. But I think also athletes nowadays are not only enjoying the fact of better pay through whatever organization they're a part of, but also all this side marketing, the social media aspect of it, all these endorsements, are paying out, and it's great for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even college, like NIL deals, like I have some friends that played in college tennis, and they probably would have made more money if they'd stayed in college for a couple more years. And you're seeing that with like basketball and a lot of the women's sports in particular. And guys, they don't really want to turn pro yet because they're not sure about what they're going to get paid. A minimum contract is X, but they're making millions in college. So I think about that a lot. Like, I didn't have that available to me, but that would have been fantastic. And I think a lot of young American athletes, I'm like, they want to stay in school now as long as they can. And I think that's great. And they should get paid, if they're making the school a lot of money. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's great. And also social media, now they're taking control of their entire narrative of how they want to be viewed, and they get to do it themselves. They're putting themselves out there on TikTok, on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, on the social medias. They don't need to rely on somebody coming after them and putting them on a local news channel. They can do it themselves and reach. And if they have millions of followers, it's a no-brainer. Sponsors come after them. Sponsors want to have them endorse things, and they're making millions of dollars just on their own in social media. So I think that's great.
I agree. I think it opens up, a post-career as well. When you hit that plateau of 38, 40 years old or whatever, you still have this following and you've built this trust.
Well, you've also banked a lot of money. And, unfortunately, a lot of athletes do retire between 30 and 40 because that's when the body starts to say, okay, I can't keep up with the 22-year-old, right? And so they've built enough financial wealth now that they can actually literally retire, as opposed to retire and find another job. And certainly there's a lot of athletes that retire and need to find other jobs and financial help. But some of these athletes that would have to do that before, who were so popular in their sport, but maybe not on a world stage, are actually going to make money just based on their own followers.
In the NBA, for example, I follow the NBA more because I suck at tennis. I will tell you right now, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But a lot of athletes obviously lose their money in tennis. Do these organizations have a financial advisor to now guide the youth or the younger generation to make sure, hey, don't go blow your money right away, on your first Grand Slam?
No, sadly they don't. They try and help. Like the tours will try and help in some ways, but there is a retirement fund, and so every check that a tennis player makes, they put a percentage of that into essentially a 401k. So that goes in, that builds over time, and so you don't really look at that until you're well retired, and they give it to you quite early, comparative to like a regular 401k where you've got to wait till you're at 65 or whatever. The tennis tour, I think, does it at 50 or 55, which is great. But that's really about it. Everything else is sort of like based on what you do. And so it's really important, if you clearly are making a lot of money, that you have a management team around you that takes care of that financially. And most do. Most are very young, so their parents are sort of in control of it as well. So hopefully your parents are, going to do the right thing by you. And certainly, there's been a lot of, rough or bad parents in any sport. But on the general, most of them have just teams that take care of that for them, and hopefully they've hired and done the right thing.
Rennae, we were rocked by a gambling scandal recently, and it's in the NBA, and people were caught up in the mafia and this and that. Is there such a thing in tennis? Like, because a tennis player, I would imagine, could throw a game if they wanted to easily by missing a hit. Or so. I'm not saying accusing anybody particularly. I don't want to know any names, but do you ever think that could happen, or has it happened in the past? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, in tennis, I think you won't get it in high-level professionals, because there's really no rhyme or reason for them to do it, because they're making such good money on their own. We've had issues in the past on the tennis tour where it's happened on the Challenger Tour, where they're not making a lot of money, right? So, for them to throw a match in the quarterfinals of a obscure little challenger in San Paulo, no one's really going to be paying attention to that, but the bettors are. And tennis, I believe, is the second most bet sport in the world, behind football, I believe, and soccer. And so, because there's so many matches that go on, and we have had a lot of players that have posted things on their Instagram about the hate mail that they get, or the instant messages that they get after they lose a match. And it's quite abusive, because we do have so many bettors in the sport. But, the beauty of sport is you don't know. It's the best reality television, because you don't know the outcome. And sometimes people think that they know the outcome, and if they're, person they think is going to win loses, they think that they're throwing the match, which is not the case. But we've had some betting scandals through the years, but it tends to happen in the lower ranked tours where they're not making a lot of money, and it makes sense for them to sort of maybe throw a match for 10 grand, you know what I mean? But for a professional, it's not worth them doing that for their reputation. And also, if they win, they're going to make a lot more money than some bettor that could ever pay them.
In your opinion, why is there such a prestige when it comes to tennis and maybe golf? I mean, you're seeing like Rolex advertisements, you're seeing the high-end boutiques that come in as advertisers. You don't get that in any other sport. What's the prestige? Why are people attracted to tennis, or maybe even golf, and on that level?
Well, I mean, listen, if you want to look at it through sort of a lens of really being honest, I mean, it is both tennis and golf are very white sports, right? I mean, they come from the country club sort of like person. That is not necessarily the case, and hopefully we're trying to change that. Certainly in golf, I think someone like Tiger sort of at least opened the world's eyes to the fact that you could have someone that looked like him dominate a sport so much, and hopefully bring in the young men in particular of color that can play sports. But it's a rich white sport. So you people that are buying their Rolexes, and drinking Evian and all the things that are attached to tennis, or the sponsors of tennis, the JP Morgans, they tend to be rich, or wealthy, or mid to wealth. And so I think that's why, and that's why you're always going to have such a large audience, because they're the majority. But also at the same time, I think it's just a great sport. I mean, and so it's watched so it's such a popular sport, tennis. Golf is popular because, so many people play it as well. I just think it's how many people play. I think it's the demographic. I think it's the financial part of it, the social, economical part of tennis and golf. And they tend to bring in those sort of high-dollared sponsors because they know that there's a lot of eyeballs on those particular sports from people that are probably going to buy the things that they're selling.
It makes sense, and it is changing. Obviously, there's all sorts of players coming in, and I'm starting to see players of all nationalities and so forth. But I always love tennis. I just, for some reason, I guess I didn't grow up in that affluent area or something. Let me ask you, are the personalities in tennis, are you getting the very snobby people, or is it a mix? Like, how would you describe a tennis personality? Because you could tell who's a golf guy on, right
Yeah.
away from a football player.
No, I think tennis is a little bit more mixed, to be honest. I do think that, when we see the audience, for example, at the US Open, it's very mixed sort of fan base. Male, female, people of color, all kinds of walks of life that love tennis. I would say they're pretty fun people. I am on the board of advisors of a company called Racket Magazine, and we do really fun things, and we bring in people that you wouldn't suspect would be tennis fans, for example. But the amount of people I've met through the years in all kinds of genres of entertainment to politics or whatever it is, are just massive tennis fans. And I often get asked, like, how do you know so-and-so? I'm like, they love tennis. So I think it's a demographic of a lot of different people, and a lot of different socioeconomics of people love tennis. And they see it on the television, and they can get it all the time. And certainly, a US Open, for example, in the United States is so big. It's on the television every night, every day. So I just think it's eyeballs and seeing a sport that people love. And it is really a fun sport to watch.
I would agree. It is fun to watch. As far as winning a Grand Slam, I mean, how did that feel? Especially your first one, maybe your second, and the last one. Like, give me a rundown on that, because that's a big goal for a tennis player. I mean, the biggest probably.
Yeah, completely. You dream about it as a child. You sort of dream about maybe winning Wimbledon one day or whatever it is. And that was it. That was, for me, just so unattainable in a lot of ways, because that just was something that I only dream of, right? So when it does happen, I mean, my first major title was at the Australian Open, which is pretty great, because my family didn't travel very much to watch me play on the tour. Just every now and then, like literally once in 20 years, my parents came away. So I think for me, it was to be able to win the Australian Open in front of, most of my family, not all of them, and then friends and family, and it was such an intense match, and it was actually packed. And we don't get that opportunity often. In doubles, we get sort of like not the full fandom that come in, but it was before a men's semi-final. So by the time we finished our match, it was packed. And so, yeah, to have that experience of winning my first major, of something you dream about your whole life. And we knew we were the best doubles team in the world at the time. So us not winning a major would have been really, really, really disappointing, because we were so good for so long. But winning a major title is just that extra step. And so to have finally done it sort of opened the floodgates a little bit more to winning more, and winning another Wimbledon and 2 Wimbledon titles and a US Open and all that sort of stuff. But winning the first was, it was it was the most memorable day of my career, for sure. I mean, all the ones that subsequently came after that, all the major titles, all meant so much to me. But the winning in the first one is just, that's just, you finally do something, you're like, oh my God, I actually did what I dreamed about. So yeah, it's pretty special.
To your point, it sounds like you proved to yourself that you could do it, and then the other ones come after because you've done it. That's so awesome. There's a big craze nowadays. This is going to get a little iffy, Rennae.
I know where this is going already.
I just see a lot of people. I've tried it once too. Pickleball. It's what is happening with pickleball, and it's like all these old guys around our community are playing, and they're so serious. And I look at it, I'm like, what's going on? I haven't done it like with my kids once, and that was it. What's up with pickleball? What's happening?
I think it's a game that can be played by anyone, and everybody thinks they're good at it. So they're like, oh, this is my sport. I'm good at something. I was like, everybody's good at pickleball because it's a dumb sport. Then it's not even a sport. It's a game. It's truly a game. But listen, I think for the older generation, if you're in your 70s, 80s, and you're not doing very much anymore, and you get out there and pop the ball around a little bit, and fine. But if you're under that 70-year-old, come on, get out and play tennis. And actually, I played paddle a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was fantastic. It's sort of like a combination of tennis and squash, And it's that to me is a lot more fun to play. And I think you can do that even as an older person. That's something that you can do as well, because you can kind of play it a little bit like pickleball, but it the way you have to play it, it's actually really good for your brain as well, because you have to, balls are coming off the wall, they're coming from the back. You're trying to figure out things like that. So it's a better game for you mentally and physically to play paddle. So I would urge people to try and at least play that if they don't want to play a full court like tennis, which does demand a lot of running. But if you're playing doubles, it doesn't really. So I just urge people to keep playing tennis over pickleball. Sometimes it's harder to find a court. Obviously, for a pickleball court, it's easy to put up on the street. You just put that one net up and the line or the kitchen or whatever they call it. But I'm not a fan. And it's been very well known that I'm not a fan if you listen to my podcast. So there you go. So if you don't want to play tennis, play paddle. Try paddle.
I love the honesty. When I first saw it, I was like, there's guys in the gym here training with their, like little stretches or whatever. Like, this is too funny. And I could tell paddle is very intense. Paddle is a sport where, again, the ball bounces off the walls, it goes behind, and you got to turn around and you got to be like aware. It almost reminds me of Stephen Curry, for example, doing all these drills with tennis balls and where they're trying to distract his eyesight and movements and so forth, to make sure he's alert in every sense of the way. I was interested to hear a professional's opinion on pickleball, and I'll have to try all of three. When you talk to a pickleball pro or a pickleball player, are they argumentative as to why tennis is inferior now, or there's no need for running around, or like what do they say? What's their argument?
Well, I can honestly say I've never spoken to a professional pickleball player, but well, certainly wouldn't want to have an argument with me about tennis being superior, because it is. And an example is a great pickleball player is not going to come close to beating a tennis player, on the tennis court, whereas the same can't be said the other way around. So you can be really good at pickle. Even with paddle, I'd never played before, and I played for the very first time, and I kind of got it in about 10 minutes, as far as like bouncing it off the walls and things like that. And, we just, tennis is so hard. It's really hard to be really good at tennis. It takes years, it takes decades to be an absolute expert tennis player. We're talking like, the best in the world are like 19 years of age. They're the great ones, like Carlos Alcaraz, and, the women's game with Steffi and Coco, and, all the greats that have come previously, Serena, Venus. But it's such a hard sport, the length and the amount of running around you and doing, and the hand-eye coordination to play tennis, and all over the tennis court, whereas pickleball, for example, you sort of hit the ball, run to that line and stand there. And it's just more about reflexes and just dinking. But that, the superiority of playing tennis over pickleball is like the difference between playing, a major golf tournament at the Masters and playing at your local putt-putt. I mean, it's kind of what it is, or you go and hit some balls on the range and you go and hit some balls on the putt-putt area. I mean, that's the difference between the two sports, for example.
I completely understand. Even just from the structure alone, the sizing of a tennis court and the placement of the ball, there's just so much space and perfection to be, trained at, or even as you mentioned, it takes so many years to get perfect, or get better, I should say. And you're not standing around, and then the intensity of running back and forth. You mentioned earlier Serena Williams. You've also coached Karolina Pliskova, Samantha Stosur, it says. I hope I said their names correctly. What was it like? I mean, that's elite level coaching, right? It's not, you're telling another Grand Slam champion kind of, hey, maybe you should look at it this way. How did you approach that? Because it's like telling a CEO of a company, hey, you need to do something else, because they're also kind of on the top level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting way of looking at it and asking me. I think you don't ever go into doing something that you're, like, I never went into coaching going, I wonder if I'm good at this. You know what I mean? I wonder if I can do this. It was just like I went into it going, I know I can impart wisdom on this person and make them better. Right. And so whatever that might be, I always felt like even as a doubles player, for example, I was always sort of the captain of my team as far as like knowing, what the game plan was, like what someone could do. I could pick somebody's game apart really quite easily, but that came really naturally to me. It's sort of like what's made me a decent commentator is that I see things. And there are some players that just don't. They just are really great tennis players. They hit the ball really well and they just go out, they get the game plan and they go and execute it. And they're amazing at that. And they don't really think about the X's and O's all that much. I was always an X and O's person. And so then as a coach, you sort of see where someone's lacking, or you see where maybe their mental game could improve, or their serve could get better, or technically they can get better on a forehand or backhand, or I could see it. I can see it. So it's then, yes, you can see it, but then there's also the ability to be able to, communicate it to them to make them better. And so I don't know. I guess I just naturally sort of fell into it a little bit, where I wasn't afraid. I think that's the bottom line. I wasn't afraid to impart my thoughts on some of the great players of all time. And, frankly, when they ask you to come and help them, they know it's because you have said things, whether it be commentating or whether it be just in, speaking to them in general terms as a person. Because, I very rarely work with somebody that I don't know. I haven't had a call from somebody that I don't even know, and they're like, "Hey, I think you could help me," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't really even know you." So I've had personal relationships with the people that I've worked with. Serena, I've known since she was 11 years of age, and so and I always talk to Serena about her tennis through her career, whether it be on text messages or in passing in the hallway, and remember, I played against her many, many times in doubles. So we had a personal relationship, and same with Sam Stosur. Sam and I played doubles together when we were playing on tour, and I traveled with her a little bit during that time, and we spent a lot of time together talking about her tennis. And Karolina Pliskova, I have never really asked her this, but I think I know it's because she used to like what I said as a commentator, and sort of said, "Hey, do you want to help me at this tournament?" And then subsequently sort of fell into like a really good working relationship, and she did really well. And with Jeannie Bouchard, for example, that came from Steffi Graf and Andre Agassi were sort of working with her in Vegas, and they suggested me for a few months. It was during COVID and stuff, coming back from COVID. So because they know what I'm like as a viewer of tennis and as somebody who can communicate how to get better at the sport. So I think it's more about just your reputation really precedes you. And if people get better that you're working with, that's a pretty good indicator that you know a little bit about what you're talking about. So yeah, I mean, obviously, getting the opportunity to work with Serena in her last US Open was pretty magical. It was also very stressful and very pressurized, if you can imagine. And coaching, people think it's easy. It's so hard because, physically it's not difficult unless you're the one practicing with the player all the time. But most top players have a hitting partner. But it's just the stress of always worrying about how to make them better. And when they're the best in the world, everyone thinks, "Oh, well, it's easier coaching the best player in the world." It's not. You've got to keep them there. And that's a lot of pressure on your shoulders. Yeah.
It's almost like parenting, where you want your child, in this case, to do so good, and you're worried and all these emotions, and you can't do anything about it aside from conveying your message. But it to your point, it sounds like they were very receptive because they respected you so much, and they've seen you work and your work ethic and what you were able to provide, not only through your commentary at ESPN or NBC, but also your commentary in person and so forth. That's wonderful. I always wondered, would someone like Serena Williams, obviously is a very big name in tennis, but would someone like LeBron take criticism or take, advice, LeBron James, or, how would a tennis player take that advice from another tennis player? And it sounds like there's a way to approach them, but also.
Well, I think the thing is, Serena, for example, or LeBron, I mean, we're talking about GOATs, right? They're the greatest players that have ever played. You can argue Michael Jordan, LeBron James, it doesn't matter.
I'll throw Michael Jordan in there.
The greats always want to get better. The greats are always the ones that ask the questions. The greats are always the ones that are curious about how they can get better every single day. And I can honestly say, when people said even about telling Serena what to do, she wants to get better. That's it, And so if I'm telling her something that in her eyes is helping her get better, she doesn't care who it's coming from. Clearly, there has to be a bottom line respect. But someone like LeBron is not going to work with somebody that he doesn't respect. And the reason he would ask for their input is because he respects what they've said either in the past or with other players, or he might have heard them talk about things like, oh, I'm interested in that. How can that help me get better? And I think the greatest players are always curious and always wanting to get better. And so if there's somebody around them that can do that for them, they're all ears. And that's the difference between great and mediocre in a lot of ways, because the mediocre person might think that they already know everything. Oh, I don't need to listen to you. I'm 20 in the world. You didn't even get past the second round of a major title. Like, what do you know? So, well, I might not play as well as you, but I know as much as you as far as how to get better. I might not have been able to achieve it myself, but I know what it takes. And you are good enough to actually get there. And so that's the difference. They always want to get better.
I love that. You understand the game, and given luck, scenarios, opponents, matchups, you may not have made it in certain aspects, but you know the game and they have to respect that. And to your point, the greats will always want to be better. And that's why they're great, because they keep improving.
Absolutely. On an everyday basis. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. As far as training, you mentioned like 10 years of practice and training. If you're in your young age at this point, what is a good training amount of time? Is it a few days a week for someone that's just starting out? Is it every day? Is it every day?
I mean, if you want to be great and if you want to be a professional, it has to be every day. Every single day. I think that you could have like a Sunday off or, the weekend off. It really does depend on the age, right? If you're talking you want to be a professional tennis player, you are spending a minimum of 2 hours a day on the court every day. And as I said, you can take a day off, but when you're building the blocks of getting to that point of wanting to be a professional at say 17, 18 years of age, you have got to be putting in the work every day, because every day, every hour, you're getting better at something, right? And particularly if you're learning from, let's say you started playing at 8 or 7, every single day, every hour you put in gets you better and better and better, and it builds the blocks. And as they say, it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at something. So think about that. Think about that from the age of 8 times 10,000. How many hours do you have to do? I haven't even thought about it, but it's years. And so the more you do, the better you get quicker. And then if you're talented enough and good enough, then you're really great at 16, right? Then you're even better at 18. So if I look at professional tennis players, for example, there's a young man called 𝐒𝐢𝐻 𝐒𝐿 who just won a tournament on the ATP 2, and he's just turned 19. And he's only going to get better because even his game is going to improve so much in the next 2 or 3 years. And you could say the same thing about Carlos Alcaraz, who won a major title at 19. And he would arguably say he's a way better tennis player now. And he's only going to get better because he's getting stronger, and he realizes, maybe he needs to improve his forehand volley because it wasn't as good 3 years ago. Or he's working on his serve because it wasn't quite as good back when he was 17 because he wasn't as strong. So there's so many things that you can improve on every single day. Jannik Sinner, for example, is always tinkering around with things. And he changed his service motion from the age of like 21 to 23, 20 to 22. That's a major change. But these players are always looking to get better. Coco Gauff is a constant work in motion with her game. Her forehand's always being worked on. Her serve is in front of the world, is getting changed. You stand on Arthur Ashe Stadium, 20,000 people, and you're working on it in practice. So these things are constantly always getting worked on. So if you can get those things down to a pat, better technically when you're 13 and 14, that's a much better idea than doing it at 20. So, make sure you put the hours in doing the right thing, and then that will come to fruition when you get to 18, 19, 20 years of age.
Put the hours in doing the right thing. So starting off correctly.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, what's a good age to get your kids into tennis? You mentioned 7 or 8 years old. they're kind of starting to understand or be receptive and not
Mm-hmm.
and more focused, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Is 10 too late, for example, or is
No,
that no?
it's not. 10's not too late. But Simon, it all comes down to the kid's passion, right? So if you push them into doing a sport that they're not really interested in, they're not going to be good at it. I mean, it's just a fact. Unless you are an abusive parent, and we've seen that way too many times in the sport of tennis or in any sport, where you just like, well, too bad you're doing 2 hours, you're doing 3 hours. You didn't need to do another hour. We're going to hit 20 more minutes of serves. And you're just like, oh, you see the kid like, I hate this. They are going to get to an age where they get to make their own decisions. So either you're going to push them into doing something they don't like, and therefore they're not going to like you. So you have to understand as a parent, what is my kid's passion? Is it tennis? And if it is, sometimes you need to pull them back. Like, honey, we don't need to do another hour. Like, we're good. Like, but you do need to know your kid. And I always say that you need to know what your kid's makeup is, right? And if they're an independent sort of person, tennis might be a great sport for them. If they sort of like not really sort of super singularly motivated, but yet they love being around people and they love being in a team, put them into a team sport. And I played all different sports. I was really quite active in all kinds of sports before about the age of 12. About 12 has started when I started focusing more really on tennis and playing tennis competitions. But other than that, I was, and I'm very independent individual. And so tennis was a good sport for me in that way because I didn't have to rely necessarily on somebody, which is kind of ironic because most of my success in tennis came with being a part of a doubles team. But that was also, work. It was really hard to do that, and you had to find the right person. But I think just know your kid, know what sport that they love to do, and then encourage them to maybe practice a little bit harder if they're good at it and they want to be better and they get frustrated. And it's like, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it and keep doing the right thing over and over and over. If you're doing the wrong thing, cut it out, try it again. You might fail, but it'll be worth it in the end.
And obviously you're a professional, and people that may be listening want to have their kids in a professional type sport or even in sports. What are some of the sacrifices you're seeing kids make to get to this level? And is it a lonely road? Are parents also sacrificing a lot to raise a professional potential athlete?
Yes. I mean, that's just a fact. Certainly, look, if you're from a big family, I was one of 5. So I don't even know how my parents functioned, to be honest, because we all were quite athletic. We were all doing different sports, but we were also independent. I would take the bus from school down to the tennis courts. I would ride my bike to the tennis. Like, I was really self-motivated. And so I think once you realize that as well, that helps because you're like, I don't need to and I've had conversations with friends of mine that have kids that play tennis, and they're very involved. They're constantly sort of trying to tell their kid what to do. And I'm always saying, you don't know the sport. You don't know how to play tennis. You should not be telling them what to do. You have to be their mom. You have to be their dad. You have to be their parent. Let the coaches tell them what to do, and sort of keep that relationship as the parent. That's super important. And be positive, because if your kid is singularly focused on wanting to be better, they will do that. But there is a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of like school holidays, for example. I never went to camp. I didn't go to school holidays. I didn't like go to schoolies, as we call it here, in Australia, where you just go off with your friends for a week and your parents are like, here's some money, go, bye. Like I was going to tennis tournaments, and my parents, one of them, mostly my mom, would have to take us to those tennis tournaments and maybe drag our siblings along with us, or, find time to find a grandmother to mind the kids. There's a lot of sacrifices that go into it, and often comes on a weekend or school holidays where you usually are going off as a family. That didn't happen for me. I was going off to play tennis tournaments. And so a friend of mine, funny enough, I was just talking to yesterday, is like, her son finally graduated and played his last football game. And she's so happy because she's like, I get my weekends back. So yeah, there is sacrifice from parents. There is sacrifices mostly from the kids because they don't get to do the quote unquote fun things. But I always look back on that time and be like, I had my fun. I was with my tennis friends and I was at tennis tournaments, which was stressful, but it's what I like to do. And I lived a life now based on the fact that I did work really hard as a as a really young kid to be good at what I did.
Yeah, you definitely have to enjoy it, it sounds like, because it's work.
Yeah.
And it becomes work you resent if you don't, right? It sounds
I think rather than look at anything as work, I think you have to look at it as your passion.
passion.
And that could be anything. That could be your work. If you're a nurse, like you have to have passion for taking care of people. You have to be passionate about going in every day and dealing with some, kind of crazy people, or people that are whiny, or people that are in trouble. You might lose a patient or whatever it is. It's like you've got to have the passion for that vocation, right? Whatever it is. And so I try and not say, work. It's more about, this is my passion and it pays me money to do. But in the end, it's what I love to do. And it might be really hard. It might be long hours and all that thing, but you have to love what you do. And obviously, look, Simon, some people have to do things because it's the only thing that they're capable of doing, or they've come up in a socioeconomically poor environment and they're sort of like working a 9-to-5 job that they hate. And that's, that sucks. But yeah, I mean, yes, there certainly are things that are just pure work and you're making way and you're paying your bills. But I hope people find a passion in what they're doing, whatever it is.
Love that. And let me ask you, we talked obviously about Grand Slams, but also 4-time Olympian. What was more rewarding, the Olympics or was it the Grand Slams? Like, not many tennis players win both or compete in both. So which one would you say holds crown?
Well, I mean, I think most tennis players will say a major title, a Grand Slam, because that's what you grow up idolizing, watching Wimbledon, watching the US Open, watching the Australian Open, the French Open on television. And you just dream about being on those tennis courts, achieving what you dream about in your sport, right? But I think for certain countries, like for Australia, for example, like being an Olympian, like and knowing that there would be one day possible that I could play for Australia at the Olympics, that was a dream. Like, I was like, this is amazing, because to be a part of an Olympics is in and of itself so incredible and so rewarding. I sadly never won a medal at the Olympics, which is it still irks me to this day, to be honest, because I did win a lot. I won 60 WTA Tour titles, so I pretty much won everything I could win in the space of 20 years. And I won, every single major title except the French Open, but I made the finals at least. That would have guaranteed me a medal, for example, in the Olympics. But also at the Olympics, I had to play with another Australian, and I didn't really have that. My most success came with Lisa Raymond, who was American, and then also a young woman by the name of Cara Black, who was from Zimbabwe. So I didn't have that sort of partnership with another Australian that I had a lot of success. So it was really hard. It's really hard to just, mix a team together or two players and be super successful right away. I played with Sam Stosur, unfortunately, for an entire year and made a Wimbledon final the year after the Olympics in Beijing. If we'd had that year prior in 2007 and then gone into Beijing with that under our belt, we probably would have medaled, I would imagine. And the team we lost to ended up winning a silver medal. So it still irks me to this day. I wish I'd won a medal at the Olympics. We didn't have mixed doubles back when I was playing, which I'm pretty sure I would have won at least a medal during mixed doubles, because I had one of the players that I won a major title with was Todd Woodbridge, who was one of the great doubles players of all time. And he was my mixed doubles partner on tour. So we probably would have won a medal. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if your listeners now realize how much it still irks me not to win a medal at the Olympics, but it sure did.
Well, I could tell.
Yeah.
But, it goes back to chemistry and almost like marriage. You were in a marriage that would not work to win anything.
Yeah.
So it's not. It sounds like
it's just the familiarity of playing with somebody is really important. It's like you could put 5 of the best basketball players up against a team that have been playing together for a year with great players, and I guarantee the team that plays all the time would probably win that if they played one game. Mm-hmm. Just, maybe over time the great players would figure out how to, who's moving, who's, doing what. But it's really hard to do that. And I always played with good players, but we just didn't play very much together. So yeah. Bummer.
Chemistry. Let me ask you, I've noticed a couple times you have a couple tattoos.
Couple.
Do you want to mention what they're about, or?
Well, I've already spoken about passion. I just really believe in that wholeheartedly with everything. And so that is tattooed here. And then on this side, it says Pee Wee, because that's what my dad calls me. My dad calls me Pee Wee. So I put that on my body, and this is a little shark. So yeah, I mean, there's just, little ones here and there, but I always tell people, don't put a tattoo on you that doesn't mean or have a meaning for you. So when people ask you, like you, what does that symbolize? I always have an answer for it, which is nice, as opposed to, well, I'd had too many drinks and I was in the lower quarter of New Orleans and I just decided to get a tattoo. And I do have friends that have done that and they regret it to this day. So I'm always like, if you're going to get a tattoo, make sure it's meaningful, because you have it for the rest of your life.
No random bumper stickers.
No random bumper stickers. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. You've mentioned chemistry and duels, and what do you look for in a partner? You've mentioned Lisa Raymond. You were great with her.
Yeah.
But what do you see? Like, some people, sometimes I could tell this person has the dog in them, or the fight, or they're focused, or what did you look for in a duo tennis player that you feel like made you guys successful?
Well, I mean, I think in double, it's, if you're putting together a basketball team, right, or a football team, you have to have the things that fit, right? You have to have a great quarterback who can throw to a great wide receiver. You have to have the offensive line to protect like everything has to work to be great, right? Basketball, it's the same thing. You might be a great 3-point shooter, but if you're having an off day, you better have a great center who's underneath there grabbing the ball for you and, doing pick and rolls. And so everything happens for a reason. It's like a wheel. It's like a motor that runs. And so in doubles, for example, I had to find somebody that was as capable of me, often at the net, because I was always at the net. That's where my best. So, for example, if I'm playing with somebody who's not great at the net, they're going to pick on my partner all the time. I'm never going to see the ball, right? Or I have to play. For me, it was very important to play with somebody who was competent at the net and also was very stable, as emotionally stable, because I was very up and down emotionally. I'd get, sometimes a little bit angry, or I would get frustrated really easily, and I needed someone there to be like an anchor that would be like, we got this. But also they needed someone like me to pull them and drag them out of the hole that they dug for themselves, right? So I always say my partner often dug the hole and hid in it, and I made a mountain and I was trying to climb over it. And so it was sort of like meshing those two things together, of the mountain into the hole to make us even. And so, yeah, I mean, Cara was very, very quiet, very kind of shy, but an incredible athlete and unbelievable at the net. And if we got the ball in the court to start a point, we didn't lose too many of them because we were so quick on our feet and, so good at the net. And we would sometimes win ugly or not. Lisa was such a great player in and of itself, like a great singles player, terrific serve. We both served well. So she was awesome at the net. She had great returns, but we meshed together, right? She was quiet as well and quite sort of almost a little bit too negative. Cara was not negative, but she was unsure emotionally of herself sometimes. And I was opposite. I was always kind of grasping for them to come out of their shell, and they were always trying to tamper me down. But that works. If you have two people that are really, really quite shy and a little bit passive, in the big moments, how are they going to get each other through it? And sometimes it's just talent and ability. Like Elisa and Akara could play together and probably do really well. But I just found that you had to be as competent as me on the tennis court. And then also the emotional side of it was really important to mesh well together, because people had to sort of take that from me, but also I had to be able to be with somebody that could take it. And so I think there's a lot that goes into it. It's honestly, it's like a true relationship out there, and you're working together.
Interesting. You mentioned a few things where your emotions are riding high and low, and it definitely takes someone that's gonna not be at
Ride
that
with
same
that
level.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you guys are gonna clash.
Yep.
And not even listen to each other, or zero each other out.
But I think in the end, it comes down to total trust, right? Trust in me, trust in them. even when things are going a little bit awry, or I'm getting a little bit upset, or they're getting a little bit negative, it's like in the end, you have to trust each other in the biggest of moments. And that's, what happened, thankfully, with those particular two.
When, during any of these moments, and did doubt ever come into your mind? And how did you overcome that in the win?
All the time. I mean, I don't think there was ever a time where you walk on the court and you're like, oh, I'm winning this. Now, you might walk on the court saying, I'm pretty confident and I'm feeling really good about myself. And I feel good about us, and I feel good about the matchup. And sure, you go into it a little bit less apprehensive. But if you've done the work and you're good enough, you certainly go on the court feeling very prepared. And I always talk about the subconscious and conscious minds quite a bit. And I think that there was times subconsciously where I didn't think I was going to win. The big matches. The first Grand Slam final I ever played, I think subconsciously I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. Consciously, I'm like, yeah, we're going to win. We beat the number one seeds. We should. No. Subconsciously, I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough yet, And I think it was probably the last one I played against the Williams sisters at Wimbledon, where I had won Wimbledon twice. There was no saying that I couldn't do any of the above and win another major title. But I was going up against Venus and Serena. They just played the singles final. They were both playing unbelievable, and they had never lost a major final. So there was part of me subconsciously that was like, can we? I don't know. And that actually cost me both times. But everyone prior, everyone sandwiched in between, I was like, there was no guarantee we were going to win, but I really subconsciously and consciously thought, we're good enough to win this, and we should win this. And so that's the difference. I always and if you have that moment where your subconscious is telling you you're not good enough, you have to have a conversation with it, like literally, and be like, well, then why not? And if you have a coach, you have to tell them that sort of stuff. And when I coach, when people say, I said, how are you feeling today? And I go, and be honest with me, because if you're not honest with me, I can't help you.
Because the exterior always makes you seem, oh, I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, a funny story, when I won Wimbledon for the second time, I played with Cara Black, and she had never won a major title. And she came we went to warm up for the match, and it started raining in the warm up. So we came off the court, and she apparently, I didn't know this until after the match, she told her boyfriend, he then told me after the match that she came off the court and said, I've lost the warm up, because the girl that she was hitting was hitting the ball so well, and Cara wasn't hitting it well, and she was missing. And he's like, it's the warm up, like it's practice. And she was just like, I know, but because she was so unsure. But thankfully for her in that occasion, she was on the court with me, and I had won quite a few, and I was very confident in that final, very confident that we were going to win. And so I think I imparted that on her through the match as it went on. And so, yeah, I mean, you can certainly change the outlook of somebody else. Like, would she have won that match by herself? I don't know, but she can only answer that question. But her subconscious probably didn't believe it, maybe. But because she had someone like me telling her, no, we're winning this, it got her to that point. But in singles, or if you have a partner that maybe has the same thought process as you, then it's going to be hard to win that match.
Yeah, I completely agree. The subconscious is very similar to any match where you step on and you see maybe an opponent that looks bigger, stronger, faster, and you're like, oh, here we go. I don't know.
Yeah. And there might be somebody who's a little smaller, but it's like, oh, I'm quicker than you. I know exactly how to get around you. And that's the difference, right? So because his subconscious mind or her subconscious mind is not thinking about the negative, they're actually thinking about only the positive. And there's no guarantees that that's going to work, right? Or you're going to win. But when they're on the same page, boy, does it help.
I agree 100%. I've been recently playing affirmation sleep music. I don't know if that's a thing in tennis, but a few of the days I wake up and I'm like, I can't do it, because they keep saying it over and over while you sleep for your subconscious training. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm capable. I deserve it. And I'm like, I wake up sometimes in that subconscious right mindset. And I think it helps. I don't know. Out of everybody you've ever coached or played with, who kind of had this aura around them, like a Michael Jordan aura or a LeBron you mentioned, although I'm going to say Jordan is the GOAT. I want to clear that up for that. It's for me. But
me too.
Did anyone have that aura where you were like, oh my God, I mean, you're proven athlete yourself, but did you ever get next to an athlete where you kind of were like, that's Michael Jordan, you know?
Yeah, I think, I had the pleasure of playing doubles with Steffi Graf and Serena Williams, for example, and I would argue those two are the greatest players of all time. And, I didn't get to play with Martina and I didn't get to play with Chrissy, but I would certainly put them in the same category, or Billie Jean. But, when I played with Steffi for the first time, I was really young. I was like 20 years of age, and she asked me to play a tennis tournament, a tournament together in Germany. I mean, no big deal, no pressure. Playing with, the greatest player of all time, who's German. And so playing with her, I played with her in Japan for the very first time. So I'd had some experience of playing with her, but she was my friend. And so there was that weird, my friend, but also I knew how great she was. She'd already won a calendar Grand Slam, meaning she'd won all 4 majors in one year and the gold medal. So she won a calendar golden Grand Slam, which I would argue no one will ever do again. Novak came very close to it. He lost in Tokyo, and then he subsequently lost in the finals to win the calendar majors, calendar Grand Slam in tennis. He lost the finals of the US Open. And there's been players, has the Serena Slam where she has all 4 at the same time, but not in the same calendar year. So when I got to play with Steffi, I did notice immediately, like, there was just no negative. There was no looking back. It was always next point, next point, next point. And kind of like a machine. She was like a machine like that. Just nothing ever bothered her. And she would sometimes say to me, why are you getting upset? Like, the point's over. And I was like, what? So I remember that so well. But I was really young and she was my very good friend. And then playing with Serena, same thing. It was just like that aura of being on the court with somebody like her. And Venus. I felt that with both of them because they just had that aura about them. So I'd say those two, Venus and Serena, and also Steffi back when I was a lot younger. But the thing that I noticed about particularly Serena and Steffi is that the last point was the last point. It was like, move on, move on. Everything was about being positive for the next, because all that mattered was winning and all that mattered was the next point. And that taught me a lot, particularly playing with Steffi when I was younger.
With Steffi, you mentioned she's not negative. Is she like that in life as well, where she doesn't dwell on the past at all and just keeps moving forward?
100%. Wow. She's truly a shark. Like, just keep going, keep swimming. Don't back up. Don't think about the past. She really compartmentalized like disappointment and moved on like better than anybody I've ever seen. Wow. And even just the way she retired, like, she didn't have a swan song. She didn't have a going away party. She didn't announce that she was playing her last US Open. She just walked off the court in San Diego and never came back. So she was not into the pomp and ceremony of like me at all. But she was also very, very shy, very different to someone like her husband, for example, who had the going away trip and everyone knew he was retiring at the US Open. He was very outwardly, gregarious and Andre, whereas, Serena, same thing. She sort of announced that she was leaving and, we had that US Open run and all that sort of stuff. Whereas Steffi was like in the middle of a match in San Diego with an injury, pulled out and then never played again. That's just who she was. And there's nothing wrong with it either way. It's just who you are as a person. And she never wanted publicity. She's very shy. I've tried to get her on my podcast many, many times, and she's one of my closest, longest friends. And she's just like, I just don't do those things. No, because it's not. She just doesn't want.
You gotta get her on. I feel like you're gonna.
One day I'll make it happen. Yeah.
Well, I hope it happens, because you know what, it sounds like you guys have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And that characteristic of my wife's kind of like that. Anything could happen. She's like, that's in the past. I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And it's such a great trait to have, because you could just move on.
Moving on. I mean, I think there's a difference between I don't want to talk about that, meaning I don't want to talk about it because it's too painful. But I think it's I don't want to talk about it because we have talked about it, and it's kind of like we've moved on and we've agreed to move on. And I think the key is, what lesson did I learn from that? Right. And that's the same on the tennis court. You can know how you missed that shot or why you lost that point, but you can't dwell on it. So if you're learning from it, you got to learn from every single thing. If you're not learning from it, then you're like putting your head in the sand. And that's just even worse than reacting to it and talking about it nonstop.
You're right. So don't dwell on it.
Don't dwell on it. Well, don't dwell on the
that.
negative and just constantly keep talking in circles. Like there's no point in that. And it's the same on the tennis court. If you're like keep rehashing, oh, I missed that shot to give me set point. It was 7 points ago. Like it doesn't matter anymore. So that's what I'm talking about. You can't ruminate over things that are negative.
I love that. And just the last few questions here as we wrap up. You've commentated for ESPN, NBC. Do you love that part of what you're doing? And you have your own podcast, which is the Rennae Stubbs Tennis Podcast.
Yeah.
Tell me about it, because a lot of people have podcasts. Is it something you're passionate about and commentating?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always do things, whether it be commentating on my podcast, is just being able to express my love of the sport, and also humanize it in some ways. And also when people watch, for example, when I'm commentating, I love to make sure that they understand the sport better, and not just like talk to them in a way that they're experts. Because not many people can listen to someone like me or another expert talk about tennis and follow it and be like, oh yeah, totally understand all that. It's like, no, they don't, because it's like me watching baseball or me watching basketball or whatever. I need someone that talks to me in a way that for the layman, which is mostly everybody in that sport, to make them understand it. Like there's nothing better. I would sit sometimes with Sue Bird and watch a WNBA game, and I'm like just picking her brain. Like, what does that mean? And why didn't they do that? And then, the explanation behind it's like, oh, okay, I get it. So when I'm commentating or doing my podcast, I'm always trying to sort of talk to those people, talk to people like me that love the sport, but want to know it even more. And understand why does someone hit that shot, or, wow, I just saw her body language change, and be able to commentate on that immediately during a match, because that makes people watch the sport differently. Oh, I'm going to watch for their body language now. I'm going to see if she hit that forehand down the line, because I've just said she struggles hitting the forehand down the line. So it kind of gives a viewer or a listener the ability to understand and watch the sport even better, because they get more out of it.
And relate to the sport. Mm-hmm. And if there were more commentators and podcasters like you with that type of skill set, we wouldn't have pickleball.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And the final question here, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be and why?
Well, I got asked this question a long time ago when I was about in my late 30s, maybe even 40, and someone asked me that question, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And usually I'm pretty quick with an answer, but on this occasion I really thought about it, because what would I tell my 20-year-old self? And I've told this many times. I would tell my 20-year-old self to listen to my elders, and that's sort of like what I say when I coach. I said, look, I wish somebody told me this, and I wish I'd listened to it when I was 22. And people tried to tell me. It went in one ear and out the other, because I didn't really understand it, and I was afraid to try something and it didn't work. And I think that's a fear of failure, and it's a fear of sort of wanting to be. You always want to be right, and you always want to make the right decisions. But sometimes if you do something that someone tells you to do and it doesn't work, you're like, well, I'm just not good enough. And that's really hard to take, right? So I always say to people, think about when you're 40 or when you're retired and you didn't try it at least. So the two worst words in the English language for success is if only. Right? If only I had tried that back then. If only I had listened to my coach a little more. And for me, I know, because it wasn't until I was in my late 20s where I finally shut my mouth, was positive on the court, didn't let things affect me. And, winning that Australian Open, for example, was an amazingly difficult thing to do. With the tennis aspect of it was unbelievably difficult, and the executing of the winning. But it was more about keeping my you-know-what together. It was literally the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was so foreign for me to not be, have some outbursts or be negative on the court. And it was so hard for me to be positive and, gee whiz, we tried, let's keep going. I mean, that was just not my personality. But in that match, that's exactly what I did, because I knew I had to if I wanted to win. And then I was rewarded with the win. Now, the worst thing is, okay, in 40 years' time, if I woke up and was like, well, I tried everything. I behaved myself. I was super positive, and I still didn't win. Then you just have to admit, well, that was my best. Right?
And accept it.
And my best was to make the final. It's not bad. Better than some people. Some people never reach a major final. And so if you can sit back and be like, was that really my best? Like, was that really, truly my best? And when I got to that point and I did that and I had the success, I was like, I wouldn't say I was lucky because it's not luck, but I feel lucky that I did that and gave myself that opportunity and therefore ended up winning, right? But there's no guarantees you're going to win. But I would just say don't have regrets. So don't have an if only and don't have regrets, because you will wake up at 40 or 50 one day and go, damn, if only I'd done that a little bit better. And my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. So I do have a regret, right? But at least I got to a point where I did the right thing and then I was rewarded. And I do feel a little lucky because I know there were some tennis players that probably did the greatest. I've seen one particular player play one of the best matches I've ever seen in Wimbledon final, and her attitude was so good in that match, and she still lost. She subsequently won other major titles, but I would say that's probably I've told her that's her best match, the one she lost, because she really did give everything, emotionally, her game, everything. Was
that luck for the other player, or was it luck, or was the other player even that much?
It was arguably one of the best matches we've ever seen at Wimbledon. So I've mentioned that to her. I'm like, that's one of your greatest matches, even though you lost it. And I think in 20 years.
Which match was that? I'm sorry.
It was _𝐐𝐫𝐬𝐿yndsay Davenport versus Venus Williams back in, I don't even know when it was, like in the mid 90s. Lindsay played such a great match. It's arguably one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. And I would say that it's probably the best attitude and best tennis she's played. She just didn't win the major that time, but she won majors. And I think Lindsay would be the first to say that if she'd had a better attitude through some bigger matches, she would have won more. You don't want that regret. And so that Wimbledon final will never be a regret for her, I would suspect. I'm sure it hurts like hell because she had a match point, but the regret part of it is different, right? And so that's what I always say. I maybe wake up at 40 and be like, damn, I just wasn't quite good enough to win a major. But I know that my best was the finals, and that's pretty great because that truly is what was your best. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't have any regrets.
I love that. Thank you so much. There you have it, folks. Rennae Stubbs came on and shared so much knowledge. It was truly a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I appreciate your time. I'm a fan, and now it's time to get my daughters into tennis and see.
Exactly. Perfect. Exactly. Make sure if you're getting kids into tennis, the most important thing is they're playing with other kids.
Okay.
I
see. So like if I was to do it, have not particularly a one-on-one right away, have it a camp environment.
100%. I'm a big believer in that. Now, listen, if your kid is uber shy and just wants to go and play on their own with you or with maybe one other person or a coach, do that. That's fine, because then they're not embarrassed. Some particularly girls get a little bit embarrassed of not being good at something in front of their others, and they laugh or whatever. Or boys, same thing. They don't want to be embarrassed in front of their friends. But if they are quite social or they're sort of into that and they want to be in a sport, I was surrounded by other kids. I always wanted to be around them. They were my friends, right? So at 6, 7, 8, 9. You got to have them around other kids, because then they'll want to go back because they want to hang out with Stevie or Julie or, Amanda, whatever. Oh, she's my friend and I want to go and play with her. So I always say, put them in camp, put them around other kids. They become friends and they want to keep doing the sport. And that to me is a really, really important thing, unless they're really shy and they don't want to be in a big group. But you have to know that about your kid.
Make it fun.
Make it fun. Make it fun. I had fun. I really had fun as a kid playing tennis. And that's why I kept going. And then I was like, I'm pretty good at this. I should keep going.
Do you still play, Rennae?
I do. I play when I get paid.
Okay. I love it. But would you go to a local, let's say you live in a community, do you play with friends? Or
yeah, listen, if there's a court available and there's, balls and someone to play with, I don't like playing with people that are not great because I end up doing all the running and that's sort of really annoying. But if I play with somebody who's good and I can just really hit and stroke the ball and enjoy it out there, yeah, I still love it. I live in New York City, so it's a little hard getting tennis courts all the time. Yeah. I love playing still, and it's so good for you, and it adds 10 years to everybody's life, just so everybody knows that.
How long have you lived in New York?
8 years.
8 years. And you love it?
Love it.
It's alive. It's alive.
Yeah.
It's like fun.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Anyway.
You know, I saw Michael Jordan. He had this thing that came out where he shot a free throw, and he said he was so worried because he hasn't touched a basketball in so long. And I think he loves the sport so much that he felt bad. You know, he just didn't want to be around the ball, I guess, so to
Yeah.
speak. And then someone made him shoot a free throw. He said it was the scariest shot he's taken in
Yeah.
his life.
Well, because you're not practicing it, so that's where it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't want to miss.
You're
When
living
you're the
up to
goat,
this.
even when you're the goat at 60, you don't want to miss, you know? So,
Poor guy's in front of a 10-year-old worried. All right. Well,
Yeah.
Rennae, thank you so much for coming
You're welcome.
on. It's been a blast.
You're welcome, Simon.